Why does everything have to be so complicated?
If you want something bad, you have to fight for it. Step up your game, Scott. Break out the Z word.
Zamboni?
The other Z word?
Zambonis?
It's zombie takeout, Scott. I wasn't trying to trick you. Hello and welcome to episode 535 of Zombie
Zombie
Takeout,
takeout.
the B-movie and cult movie show. I'm John.
And hello, I'm Scotto.
And before we get to this week's movie, I just want to quickly say rest in peace to the great Vic Fleck. He was the guitarist who played on the James Bond theme, that iconic riff that every guitarist learns right after they learn Smoke in the Water. Not a very well-known guy, but played one of the most iconic guitar parts ever recorded. Also did a ton of session work in the 60s and 70s. He actually played on, I think it was Hard Day's Night.
Wow.
The movie. There's a bit in
Okay.
the movie he played. Did a ton of stuff with Tom Jones and just a ton of other pop sessions at the time. But yeah, obviously the James Bond theme makes it appropriate for both shows, so I will be mentioning on both shows. And now on to this week's movie, which is from 2010, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Of course, that brings us to the impromptu plot summary, sponsored by the unlikable protagonist, frustrating audiences since 1891.
And also brought to you by Pizza Pizza, a very real Canadian pizza chain that is not Little Caesars. All right. So we got a dude who's dating high school girls.
And bragging about it. At 22.
Although, in all honesty, it's Michael Cera. So,
Yeah.
I mean, does he really seem 22 to
Fair
you in
point.
this? I'm like, how old's he supposed to be exactly?
Mhm.
Oh, 22. Yeah. Well, he's doing it because he was in a funk. He had his heart broken from a past relationship and kind of set adrift, lost at sea. Yeah, just trying to, just really working on his band, and that's it. And how much was he really working on the band, by the way
Mhm.
the band was?
Yeah.
Um,
I liked them. I like Sex Bomb. I think
that's true.
they're kind of like MC5 meets Violent Femmes.
It's a good style and everything. And, I thought the trivia was awesome where,
Mhm.
he had to dumb down his bass playing. So he didn't look like he was this prodigy in front of everyone that was just kind of,
Uh-huh.
eh.
Uh-huh.
But they got the job done. That is the point in the end. They went to a show and they rocked, That's all they needed. Uh, well, things get complicated because, well, this high school girl starts really falling for him. And to make matters worse, he literally has a girl of his dreams. There's a lot of magical realism in this where things kind of happen before they happen a little bit. Time isn't exactly as an important element.
Right.
He starts getting threats about dating somebody from a jealous ex for somebody he hasn't started dating yet. And then, because think about how that sequence went.
Yeah.
He's reading the email, threatening him,
He had only
and
just seen her and very poorly attempted to chat her up at a party.
I don't even know if he saw her at the party yet. I think he
Oh,
just saw
okay.
her. I think he may have just seen her in his dream.
Oh,
And
okay.
he had the email the next day, and then went to the party after that. And then after that, he. So, uh, this is sounding like a really bad
Mhm.
romantic comedy. Because you're talking a guy dating a high school girl
Uh-huh.
and a guy that's just totally bad with women, trying to chat up the girl of his dream. Except, uh, it turns into pretty much. Well, they put it as a video game, but
Uh-huh.
I swear there's a plot of a kung fu movie
Yeah.
like this where you have to face seven of something,
It was influenced by a lot of things.
and but to take that, uh, sort of to take like a figurative look at you know wrestling with someone's past
Mhm.
and their demons and literally having to fight them, um, is really clever because Yes, the jealous ex comes to challenge him into a fight in the middle of their gig, and he winds up. It turns into a total video game. Um, I'm blanking on the video game. Mortal Kombat, I guess
Mhm.
you could say.
Yeah. Fighting video
It would
game
be a
of
Mortal.
any kind.
Yeah. So the two of them are just fighting in front of the audience at the show, and he bests them, and when he does, he pretty much bursts into coins, with the score
Mhm.
floating over his body, and it's revealed there that he is to fight all of her exes, and she has seven exes,
Mhm.
and he's of course the first of the seven, and there's a league of exes that has been formed that he must get around. If you think about it, it's kind of like that. If they could have done this with Chasing Amy.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of Smith Spark in a lot of ways.
It does. It very much does. And only of course, he didn't have to literally fight her
Hmm.
past. He just, mentally had to.
Right.
And he of course lost that fight in Chasing Amy. Whereas this, he gets a one up at least to help him out of the and other power ups to help him in his fights. Uh, and of course, he learns a lot about himself along the way, and I guess we could say hilarity ensues.
The comic it's based on started in 2004, so it very well could have been very Kevin Smith influenced.
Well, I mean, I can imagine a lot of comics after, especially Chasing Amy,
Yeah.
which was about the comic world in
Right.
itself.
It was based on the graphic novel series Scott Pilgrim by Brian Lee O'Malley. After O'Malley completed the first volume of Scott Pilgrim, his publisher, Oni Press, contacted producer Mark Platt to propose a film adaptation. O'Malley originally had mixed feelings about the adaptation, stating that he, quote, expected them to turn it into a full on action comedy with some actor that he hated. Though he also, quote, didn't even care, admitting I was a starving artist and I was like, please just give me some money. Director Edgar Wright said that O'Malley was, quote, very involved with the script of the film from the start, contributing lines and adding polish.
Of course, Edgar Wright is a
Mm.
crucial
Yeah.
part of
Right.
this.
You didn't mention that one of the Evil X's is in a band that just got signed with one of Scott's previous exes, both of whom are well out of his league. Even, I mean, age aside, the high schooler is well out of his league.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of you want to say it's inexplicable, but we've seen this shit like this before, though, where it's like, how did this guy pull this off?
To quote a mutual friend of ours who was on the show some few years ago, Tom Norman, who is he, the man with the golden dick?
Ooh, and Tom Norman linger longer, huh? For with the earring.
But how does he pull like this when he is this pathetic loser? Uh, but yeah, he's at 22. He's dating. He's bragging about dating a high school girl. I did like the sound effects written on the screen, as because it's based on a comic book. That was a nice touch. The guitarist in his band is named Steven Stills. As a musician, I enjoyed that.
Yes. Uh, and when they do the exposition at the beginning, it's done so quickly
Hmm.
intercut
Yeah.
that it really forces you to pay attention.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like they're going from one thing to another in these quick cuts where you're just like, wait, what? You're like they're here, then they're there.
And that's totally an Edgar Wright thing.
Yeah.
But this is even faster than like Sean.
Yes.
Um,
And it's very kind of trippy because it's like, like I said, things aren't happening in chronological order. Like somebody's at the door already,
mhm.
uh, or his roommate passed out and somehow
Yeah.
called his
Yeah.
sister.
Right. The drummer in his band is played by Alison Pill, who played Dr. Girardi on the first two seasons of Picard. She looked very familiar, but I couldn't quite recognize her because it was 10 years earlier and she has red hair in this. Had to look her
Yeah.
up. Um, I liked the rundown of Scott and Wallace's apartment, where like the one horrible poster was Scott's and everything else was Wallace's.
Oh, you also left out the band that his exes or their exes were playing in.
Hmm?
They were playing Metric.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. You're
Uh,
the metric fan. I didn't know.
I, I sadly they had Larson singing instead of Emily,
Uh-huh.
which I mean, Emily's a much better singer than
Hmm.
Larson, but
Yeah.
I mean, I guess for authenticity.
Right. Um, I do like that everyone calls him out for dating a 17-year-old. And, well, the two women do. His drummer, and Kim, and his sister. His
Yeah,
other male bandmates, or his bandmate, the guitarist, and their roadie, I guess, who eventually becomes their bass player, are kind of on board with it. The two women call him out. I was at least glad to see that.
I think his roommate does too.
Does he? Yeah, oh yeah, Wallace does too. Wallace, his roommate, is gay, incidentally.
Yeah.
I liked the gag where they share a bed, and Scott sits up in the middle of the night after a nightmare. Wallace sits up next to him, and then another guy sits up to say something, and he's the other Scott.
Right. Oh, by the way, I mean, this is Kieran Culkin.
Mhm. As
If
Wallace.
I mean, I know we're getting ahead to like sequels and remakes, but this cast right now would be like a
Yeah,
billion
right,
dollars.
right.
It's ridiculous, this cast. It wasn't in 2010.
Uh, One of the evil X's is played by Chris Evans.
Yes,
Who,
yes.
he's
Chris
MCU
Evans,
material, former MCU. Um,
Brie Larson. I
yeah.
mean, it's just fucking ridiculous.
Hmm.
Culkin, of course, just off that HBO
Okay.
Succession show, and just won a shit ton of awards for that over the last 3 or 4 years.
I have to call out that Kim used the R slur in 2010.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure they took it from the book, but still, that was 2004. It was not okay in 2004.
A lot of people liked using it in the aughts.
Hmm.
It was the edgy thing then.
Yeah.
Uh,
12 minutes in, I remember thinking I liked it a lot more the first time I saw it. Like sometime in the last decade. I've only seen it once before.
yeah.
And when Scott zeroed in on Ramona, I really felt bad for Knives.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole beginning is very like very awkward,
Yeah.
very cringe.
I couldn't help wondering if I'm supposed to be rooting for him. There's a difference between protagonist and hero, and this movie makes that abundantly clear.
Right. And it is about having an arc though,
Hmm.
It is about him being a total shit show in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, for
Uh,
95% of the movie, and then making a sudden change at the end.
I
Because
don't
it's
know
not
about
really an arc, it's just kind of a bend.
I don't know if it's that sudden. I mean, he's you know kind of picks up things here and there, and it takes him a while to put it together,
It's more
and
a
luckily
hockey
he
stick than an
does.
arc to me. But I liked Wallace eyeing up his sister's boyfriend when they were, watching Sex Bomb at the Battle of the Bands.
Yeah, Culkin steals so many scenes in this.
Wallace is easily my favorite character in the movie.
Hmm. It's not a race. The band plays like a really ridiculously short song.
Mm. That first fight scene, nice and sudden. The first Evil X just kind of shows up out of nowhere at a Battle of Bands.
Oh my
Good
God,
fight.
it's a Bollywood thing.
Yeah, good fight choreography. I thought the Bollywood number was a little over the top.
That's kind of when I started getting into this more, I
Uh,
mean, it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna have some fun here.
I didn't mind the Seinfeld reference, but the canned laughter got a little annoying after it went on for too long.
The sitcom thing, I mean, I don't know if he's harkening back to a Natural Born Killers or not, but
Mhm. Yeah, I
it,
get that.
it was kind of done there. It was weird, and it was just this one brief scene that kind of not sure why he chose that for that moment
But
to
they
break it
actually
up.
used the Seinfeld music at
Yeah.
the beginning of it,
Oh yeah, they totally did.
which ultimately is kind of fitting because he's kind of a dick, and
He is.
Seinfeld kind of a dick in
He
the
is.
movie in the show.
He's the George Costanza, you know? I mean,
But
you
well,
kind of wondered
either way
how
you look at it,
Costanza got the girls that he did too, you
yeah.
know?
But none of them were good people. That was kind of the point of Seinfeld.
Well, yeah, that is true. But
Um,
Costanza was the worst.
hmm. I liked Scott swatting away the word love when Knives says that she's in love with him. That was nice. But even after 40 minutes, I saw nothing redeemable about him.
Oh yeah, he's just lost.
Hmm. It was nice to see the Casa Loma. Um, I've been there. It's a
Oh yeah?
tourist thing. But it was probably one of the most memorable parts of the trip I took to Toronto and Niagara Falls with my parents back in high school. Um, I'm kind of afraid of heights, and the second floor is very high and is a balcony on both sides.
I don't think I've ever been to this place. Does it still exist?
I would presume so. It was
Huh.
a castle that was moved from Europe to Canada by some rich guy
Huh.
many years ago. Um, Yeah, but it's the second floor, very high up, balcony on both sides. I'm scared of heights, so I hung out on one of the sides that wasn't, a balcony. And if when I had to cross, I just hauled and didn't look to either side. But it was nice seeing it in there. And I loved that fight scene. This is the one that Chris Evans plays the evil X. He's an actor.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the skateboard dare.
mhm. And the editing was brilliant because it looked like Sarah was doing a lot of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the fight scenes are just brilliant in this.
Loved seeing Scott jumping through the window when Knives shows up at their apartment. Like, Wallace is trying to stall and like keep her at the door so Scott can, hide. You see somebody right just behind him jump through, like
Jumping through
face
the
first
window.
through a window.
He just left.
Nice to see Mae Whitman show up as one of the evil X's. She was the voice of Katara on Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I was a big
I
fan of.
was trying to figure out where she was from.
She was also briefly, I want to say briefly, 16 episodes of Arrested Development as Anne slash Egg, his girlfriend.
Okay.
If you ever saw that, um,
I've seen some of them, so I
mm,
mean, obviously that's where Sarah got his start.
yeah. Um, I loved Kim's line. All our shows are secret shows. As an independent recording artist who has yet to find an audience, that one just got a little too real.
I was thinking of Citizen Dick from not Almost Famous,
Mhm.
Singles, well, we're huge in Belgium.
But like between Scott and the bass player from his ex girlfriend's band Clash at something, um, who is also
Hmm.
the bass player, the movie just gives bass players a bad name.
And I mean that whole sequence is just hilarious. The whole vegan police.
Loved the bass battle that brought it a half a brain.
Yeah,
Nice to see use of the actual comic in Todd and Ramona's backstory, but yeah, the vegan police bit was amazing. Um,
and just the whole like duping into having half and half,
yeah,
and
yeah. And then like Scott tricks him into drinking some half and half because he's
yeah,
a vegan. And his powers come from being vegan. Um, but then you find out, well, it wasn't the only time he's cheated. I forget what the
right.
middle one was. It was kind of a half step.
It was I forgot what it was, but then the ridiculous one
Yeah,
is a chicken parm.
yeah, chicken. He's like, he was shocked that this one thing that was kind of a half step between the veggies. I think would have
Oh, it
technically
was
been
gelato. It was
gelato, which
gelato.
would have been lacto of a vegetarian, which is what I am. Um,
Yeah,
and he's like, "Oh, you mean that's not vegetarian?" And then they
milk and
correct him,
eggs, bitch.
and then they call him out on chicken parm, and he says, "You mean chicken's not vegan?" And then they take his powers away. The whole Roxy story a bit problematic, a little biphobic, but at least she doesn't. She's not around for long.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was kind of
She
played
was
for
a
what it was.
phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that also speaks to a big point of this movie. It isn't just that Scott Pilgrim was a shit show.
Uh-huh.
Ramona was too.
True, true.
Ramona thought that, and it's kind of a sad thing that a lot of people do in life when things get really fucked up, they just kind of leave
Hmm. Yeah,
and hope that that's the answer to all their problems,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
So she leaves New York to just try to get away and be a new person. And you find out she was a fucking asshole too
Right.
with Gideon and all that. And so it wouldn't be that surprising that she was an asshole to Roxy.
You may have just bumped up the half brain I withdrew at the ending. Um,
But yeah, that's kind of the point. They're both fucked up.
yeah, okay. Um, but the final ex, Gideon, Jason Schwartzman does a brilliant job. He's a record company executive, so of course you got to hate him. Um,
Jason Schwartzman as the final boss. Think of how funny that is.
and he's such a douchebag that I almost
Yes.
sympathized with Scott. Almost. Got a kick out of the sold out Sex Bomb because they get signed. The way he
Yes.
tries to defeat them is he offers to sign the band. If he can have Ramona back, or not if, but he's taking Ramona back, and as a peace offering, he offers to sign the band. The other two sign in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Scott quits. They bring in young Neil, their roadie, who has filled in on it for him, who knows all his parts, to be their new bass player. He comes in for the last fight. You see the Sex Bomb completely sold out.
Wearing suits.
Yeah.
Pretty much just like the Hives a little, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And is playing this very cheesy pop song, like alt pop. Um, Love Knives showing up to get a piece of Ramona to avenge Scott. Second favorite character easily. Close second to Wallace.
Right. And the way they end it,
Mhm.
between them, at first I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of shitty. But then I realized, no. Knives has a point, you know?
Yeah.
He's he's just gonna wake up and be like, what have I done, and just thinking about her all the time anyway, and just,
And she is too
understanding,
good for him,
yes,
as
that
Wallace said
she's
early in the
too
film.
good. That is the logical conclusion. She's too good for him, and she can do better.
Yeah. Um, I didn't buy him learning his lesson that quickly. Gideon kills him. He goes to the afterlife, has a heart to heart with Ramona, gets the backstory, and suddenly realizes what a shithead he's being.
Oh, he learned from his mistake and had a second chance at life.
Yeah. And
A
then he
second up.
redoes the fight and does it the right way. Um,
I like that. That like, wait, where is he going to take where do you start? It's like any video game.
yeah.
Where do I have to start
Right.
again from?
Yeah.
Takes him all the
Fair.
way back to the apartment.
Right. Um, I liked him befriending Negascott. That was a nice touch.
Oh yeah, because he, being at peace with himself
Yeah.
finally.
Um, I was annoyed that he ended up with Ramona. It was like rewarding the asshole, but you make a very good point about her being just as much of an asshole as him.
Yeah, yeah. That was entirely the point where, she kind of revealed, oh yeah, I was kind of the one who was
Yeah.
obsessed with Gideon, and
Hmm.
well, she's being all aloof there for a reason because she doesn't want it. She's trying to escape her old self.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
of course,
All right.
Pilgrim doesn't have that advantage.
Uh-huh.
He's there in his scene in Canada, which is
Hmm.
kind of another character of the movie, that whole Toronto scene,
Hmm.
right down to the pizza.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean it's been 40, close to 40 years since I've been there, but Toronto always kind of struck me as a clean version of Philadelphia.
Oh, anything's a clean version of Philadelphia. No offense, guys. Oh, I mean, come on,
But
if you're from
but I
there, you
mean, it
know it.
reminds me of not just it's cleaner than Philadelphia, of course, but it looks like Philadelphia in a lot of ways.
I mean, there's so many cities I've been to, and the majority of them are cleaner than Philadelphia.
But I mean, the city itself, the layout, the vibe of it reminds me a lot of Philly.
But yeah, Toronto is very clean. And very sprawling too.
Mm.
It's kind of like LA in that way,
Oh,
where it's
yeah.
they took over so many suburbs and it just goes on forever.
Uh,
And they don't really have that much. I mean, they kind of have a transit system,
uh.
but it's tough to get around.
And just a note, if you're going to Canada for the first time, just because this was a mistake my father made, kilometers are different than miles.
Ha! You're kidding, right?
He got pulled over for speeding, like minutes after we crossed the border.
I always joke about that. Oh, I could do 100 here, man.
He didn't realize it was kilometers suddenly.
I, Mrs. Scotto is so tired of that joke because I mean we go in so often,
Mm.
and so I could do 100 here. But if you're on the 401, I mean
Oh.
that isn't that
Mm.
unlikely that you would be doing that.
Well, any large multi-lane, highway, you keep with traffic, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I forgot to look it up, but I know there is a series that came after this.
I think an animated thing. I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
sure
an
how long it
animated
lasts.
series. But I don't know if there's anything else. Obviously, it started with a comic book. There's the animated series. There's probably a game. I really didn't do. It was a busy day. I forgot to do sequels and remakes, but I know there is that animated show.
Well, there is talk of them doing a sequel.
Okay.
I'm just not sure exactly
Mhm.
uh, what, I mean, because it's, 24
Yeah.
years later. Is it about, being a parent? Is it about, is it
14
about,
years. It's 2010.
oh, 14. Okay. Is it about, staying in a long relationship?
Mhm.
What happens after you're with somebody for 14 years?
That could be interesting. Again, as you point out, the cast would be bloody expensive, but
I eat Aubrey Plaza, Anna Kendrick,
mhm,
Jason Schwartzman.
if they
This
could
is
get
a
everybody
ridiculous
back. Well,
cast.
Schwartzman, his character didn't make it, but the others you mentioned did.
That's true.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to get Evans because he didn't make it. But what became of Scott and Ramona would be an interesting thing to find out.
We haven't even really talked about Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah, she played Ramona.
It's a great performance.
Oh yeah,
It's somebody who's trying to reinvent themselves and you know and move along with their life, but then eventually that whole the asshole has control of her in some way.
right. And she's great in everything. She's one of those actors where you don't see the acting, but she's just kind of seamlessly great in everything.
That's true. Like even Ahsoka, I
Yeah.
mean, they're, she is great in everything.
But there's no kind of histrionic thing like even Jamadi, who we rave about all the time. You see the acting.
Yeah.
With her, it's just seamless and believable, and she's just great in everything.
Like this, you just felt like she wandered onto the set.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like the character somehow came onto the set and just fit into the whole scene.
right. On the brains.
On the brains.
So I'm giving it back to Half Brain. I took off for the ending because you make a very good point. I ended up really liking it by the end. It just took me a while to get there. I'm going 4.5.
The beginning's uncomfortable, but I think that's very much intended because, well, I mean, he's Michael Cera.
Yeah.
That's what he does. I'm giving it a 5. There isn't really much I'd change about this, and there's so many details. I think that I didn't pick up the first time I'd watched it like 10 years ago or whatever. Um, you like the scene that has infinite sadness, and he's
Mhm.
wearing a Smashing Pumpkins Zero
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah. It's a nice
I mean,
touch.
there's so many little things in here
Uh,
that you could watch this multiple times and pick up new things.
hmm. And what have we learned?
When I watched this movie, I felt like I was on drugs. Not that I do drugs, unless you all do drugs, in which case I'm on them right now.
And I learned that I should go vegan.
Powers.
That's it for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Until next time, when we'll be reviewing The New Barbarians. It's an Italian post-apocalyptic B movie. Back to our roots.
Yeah,
Until then, of course, always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life,
there you are.